Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So, Trump has just come back from his NATO summit, and he has negotiated a new deal, which is that over the course of the next 10 years, every country will increase their defense spending in proportion to their GDP from 2% to 5%. And that breaks down into 3.5% of that is going to be for traditional armaments, so tanks, planes, troops, weapons, what you would typically think of when it comes to defense spending. And another 1.5% is going towards infrastructure, making sure roads and bridges are secure, cybersecurity, I'm electrical security, keeping the power grid up, making sure that if you had a total war on the continent of Europe, that everything would be maintained, things would be running, the infrastructure is secure. So all of that's good news because every single one of these countries has to step up and pay more because the US has been taking the burden for a long time. And when we're asking each country to just pay 5% of their GDP, they should already be spending that much, if not more, already on security. The reason they haven't been is because they think that because of NATO's Article 5, that if Russia or China or somebody else attacks any European country, America will de facto come to their aid. And they don't have to spend money on military because America will come save them. So we want to change that perception. We want them to step up and secure themselves. Fortunately, some voices have said this over the last couple of years, like Macron, saying we got to increase spending because when the rubber hits the road, we don't know if America will come save us. Yes, legally we have to, allegedly, but the thing about the law is enforced by who has power. And since we have power, we have enough power to say, no, never mind. We're just not going to come save you guys. So that is a real concern for Europe that whoever's president, whether it's Trump, whether it's someone in 10 or 20 years, might just say, yeah, I don't think we're going to come help you if Russia or somebody else invades. So it's good that they're increasing spending. We want other countries to realize that America is not their economic zone to be used however they want. This also helps in terms of the more we detach from NATO, which there's questions of if we should be in it in the first place, but the more we detach from NATO, the more it might actually lower some tensions. Because if other countries are accountable for more spending or more of their security, they're a lot less emboldened to start conflicts themselves or start, getting really aggressive towards Russia, which some of these countries have been. I mean, even like England and France were talking about sending troops to Ukraine, and everyone was like, that's not a good idea because that'll increase things, it'll escalate things. England sends a bunch of troops to Ukraine, then Russia retaliates against some NATO country in response, maybe Poland or whoever, and then suddenly everybody's involved in a war that did not need to happen. So there's that concept of if America's not there to save you, if your big brother's not home, he's not in town, maybe you shouldn't be picking fights with the other kids in the neighborhood because no one's coming to save you. Right now, Europe feels that security, that America will come and save them no matter what happens, but we want that to not be the case. We want them to not start something they can't finish. So don't be aggressive towards Russia. Don't be, aggressive towards China. Don't be starting things that you as an individual country cannot handle on your own. Now, I don't know if I want to be in NATO anyways, because, like I said, they need us. There's very little benefit that basically all NATO countries give to the United States. Everybody knows that the United States is the one who's going to fund the war, who's going to have the manufacturing for the war, who's going to send the troops for the war. Everybody knows that. What benefit do we get from, especially a lot of these little countries, what benefit do we get from getting drawn in their conflict? Or say China attacks America. Not saying that would happen, but let's just say we get into a war with China. Well, are these countries even going to be any benefit? Is like Estonia's military, is Finland's military really going to be that much of a benefit to us? Maybe marginally. I mean, the information sharing, the cybersecurity, that kind of stuff is probably the most valuable thing they could offer. But when you're looking at both sides of that equation, it's if we get attacked, all these other people would help. But if one of those small countries gets attacked, what's the risk versus reward calculus for us having to get involved and carry the majority of the burden? Probably not that worth it for us. Now, NATO is good for keeping countries from not declaring war or not pushing the boundaries very much. Russia will not anytime soon, I don't think, invade an actual NATO country. The reason they wanted to invade Ukraine was because they didn't want them to be in NATO. And we were talking about putting them in NATO, and Russia doesn't want NATO countries on its border because the whole NATO infrastructure is counter Russia. So clearly you don't want your enemy on your doorstep. So, but the countries who are already established in that, I don't think Russia is going to get involved. I don't think they're interested. I think, and you have to remember, even if we don't have a legally binding contract with these countries that will come and save them, and like I said, you don't even if it's legally binding, like who's going to enforce it on us? Who's going to punish us for not showing up? We're the ones who do the punishing. So who's going to come after? Who's going to watch the watcher? Even if we don't have a legally binding contract, there's no reason we can't go and help countries. There's not, if NATO disbanded tomorrow and Estonia gets invaded by Russia, or it's looking like that might happen, there's no reason we can't go and tell Russia, like, hey, we're not going to let you invade Estonia. We're allies. That's not going to happen. We're just letting you know that ahead of time. We can still mediate. We can still get involved. We can still say we'll come to the defense of these countries. We can still actually come to the defense of these countries. But having that legal obligation, having that comfortability for the European nations that America will come and save us if we start something we can't finish, that's a concern for sure for Americans. The amount of spending that we do for Europe, not just defense spending, but in its entirety to keep Europe afloat, that's something that's going to get pulled back over time. Trump's doing that a little bit, but as America becomes more isolationist, which we are definitely becoming more isolationist, that's just going to happen. So Europe's got to step up. That's why people like Macron are actually right about when they say, like, hey, someday America might just totally abandon us. Like, they might just cut off the taps. And if we're not self-sufficient before that happens, we're going to encounter serious problems. So I'm glad to see this. I'm glad to see new negotiations. I'm glad to see Trump pushing them harder to become more self-sufficient. I think any country is ultimately responsible for their own destiny. That can come in the terms of negotiation, but if the negotiations break down with other countries, with allies, eventually your own security comes down to yourself, your military, your economy, what you can do to provide for yourself. So these countries got to realize that. They got to feel a little bit less safe about their position of being under the wing of America because we're losing power, both because we're just losing it to China and Russia, and then also we're going to start giving up control as we become more isolationist. So they got to become more self-sufficient. So that's my thoughts on this. If you made it all the way through the video, I appreciate it. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and thank you for watching.